got a small American bullfrog, which is, when it's fully grown, is the largest frog in North America. And here we have a common toad. And one of the key differences between frogs and toads is that toads have this thick, knobbly back skin back here. And that's one of the reasons why they can stay further away from water than your average frog, because frogs, usually their skin will dry out very quickly. But toads have evolved so that they can hold more moisture, and so they can spend more time away from the water. They also have these, if you see these big glands here, those are the poison glands. So toads are also commonly toxic, which can be a problem, especially when they're invasive and there aren't any local predators to control their population.
Now, you mean poisonous to other animals?
Yes.
That ingest them.
Right. So when an animal will try and swallow it, it'll spit it back out. Either because I guess they also taste really bad as well. The poison tastes bad. One of the cool things about frogs is that they have these features here on the side of the head, and that's actually their eardrum. So their eardrums are right on the outside of their head, and they're very large. So when frogs are calling to each other, they can communicate and hear each other over very long distances. So they have a very advanced ear system. And these are some salamanders. These are from California, actually, but they're good representatives of what salamanders typically look like. So their bodies aren't as adapted to moving on land like frogs are. They spend almost all of their time in the water. Maryland's an interesting state because we actually have the third largest salamander in the world, which is the hellbender on the left there. And the other two are from Asia, and that's the Chinese giant salamander and the Japanese giant salamander. So, very big salamanders.
Wow.
And they're so big that they can actually eat crayfish and things, so they can crunch through crayfish, which is cool. And back in prehistory, they were even larger, so that's a fossil amphibian from prehistory. And in Maryland, we also have the mud puppy, and we have the eastern newt. There are more examples, I picked those because I think they're cool. Mud puppy's also pretty big. And then the juveniles of the eastern newt are bright orange. It's a very cool population, yeah. And then we have the green tree frog, which is one of the loudest frog calls that you'll hear in Maryland. And they do it very quickly. And actually, a lot of farmers out west apparently will use the calls that these guys make to predict rainfall. So if you're worried about harvesting a crop that won't be harvestable when it rains, some of these older farmers will use the call of the tree frog to predict whether they should harvest or not.
Listen to the frogs.
Yep. Yeah. And here's another good picture of that eardrum here. Oops. In a frog. So they're very specialized at communicating to one another. A lot of people will consider amphibians as very primitive, but that's not actually true. They do a lot of advanced behaviors, and the hearing system is an example of that.
But that is not true in a toad.
Toads, yeah, they're typically less, as far as I know, they're typically less specialized for that. They're not as sensitive to that. I mean,
Where are their ears then?
So that would be this. So they do have one.
It's just not as pronounced.
It's not as pronounced, yeah. And that might be to do with the thickening of the skin. If it's attached to the skin, maybe it also thickens.
So you have to gain something and lose something else.
Right, it's a trade-off, yes. Yeah. It's an evolutionary trade-off.
All right, thank you.